And welcome to this edition of Assembly Calendar. I'm your host, Matt Vischer. Our guest today is New York State Assemblyman Bob Oakes, who represents the 130th Assembly District of Wayne, Cayuga, and Oswego counties. Thank you very much for joining us today. The Assemblyman is here to discuss the ongoing budget negotiations. We're now, as of this taping, in the fourth week of March, and the April 1st deadline is fast approaching. So we're going to get an update from the Assemblyman, who also is the chair of the Ways and Means Committee on the New York State Assembly minority. And sir, so take me through the process and where things, so we're going from the release of the budget proposal from the governor up until this point.
Absolutely. The governor in January ended up presenting his executive budget, and that is a pretty large document and not a single one. It's multiple bills that the governor is putting together covering multiple areas of the budget. The governor's proposal, right around $143 billion. If you divide that into the number of people who live in New York State, 19 plus million, that's around $7,300 for every man, woman, and child in New York State that this budget spends. So a significant document. There's two types of bills that the governor presents. One is an appropriation bill that says how much money is going to be spent or that he's proposing to spend for a certain program, a certain item within the budget. And then there's what we call Article 7 bills because of the state constitution. Within that, in Article 7 of the state constitution, it says that you shall describe how you're going to spend those appropriations. So the Article 7 bills actually say we have education aid, but that education aid is going to be spent for certain programs and in a certain way. And so the governor put that together, I think it was January 22nd, made that proposal in front of the legislature. That started a series of budget hearings that the combined Senate and Assembly committees, Ways and Means and Senate Finance, met together, heard from people, got input. We were able to ask questions of commissioners that might have been there from the governor's or the executive's office to give us perspective on what is the governor thinking, how are they going forward, why did they do this, why didn't they do something else. And then individuals came in to give their perspective on the budget to let us know as well why they thought we ought to switch money, add money, maybe even take out some money out of the budget. So that went on for 2 or 3 weeks, leading through into February. And then early in March, we had both the Senate and the Assembly majorities put together one House resolutions that basically formed their positions on the state budget. And so the state Senate passed their resolution, the state Assembly passed their resolution, which then led us to conference committees to try to work out the differences between them.
And we have your reaction from the passage of the Assembly's budget resolution. We're going to go ahead and roll that and come back and discuss in further detail with Assemblyman Bob Oakes.
For me, and the premise, I think, for many in this House, the best way to spur economic growth in the state and have a successful state and end up providing the benefits to our municipalities and individuals who have needs is to have a business climate in the state that encourages businesses that they have an opportunity to expand, entrepreneurs who says to them that they can risk capital to start new businesses that ultimately create more jobs and ultimately provide the tax resources for this great state. I think this One House bill does that to some measure, but it also falls in a long way short of putting us in New York State in the position that we can be most competitive and have the most success.
So now take us through the process now, sir, if you could. The Assembly has now passed its budget resolution. What happens now? So we're now post that point. What is happening now?
So as I mentioned, and I was reacting to the One House budget bill, which, by the way, when I was saying, if I might just digress back to that one moment, that the Assembly set out forth their priorities, but within their budget and even within the governor's, I didn't see some of the mandate relief that would help local governments. I didn't see some of the regulatory relief that would help businesses in the state be more competitive, and some of the what I think incentivizing or tax cuts that might make New York State more competitive. And what I was saying is we can't get to where we want to be as a strong state if we don't have a state where it's a thriving economy, where people are wanting to be here, people are able to find jobs more easily, and state policy has an impact on that. And my feeling was the One House Assembly budget bill wasn't taking us in the direction that I thought we ought to be going, but actually pulling us in a different direction. So be that as it may, we're now in the throes of trying to have this budget negotiated. The governor, with representatives, leadership from both the Assembly and Senate, have been meeting, trying to work out differences between the governor's perspective and the two one-house budget bills. And so that process is continuing, and in New York State, historically, that's been a process that's been more not one out in front of the cameras or whatever, but more behind closed doors, trying to work through some of the issues to come up with some solutions to how do you spend most effectively that $7,000+ per person for every man, woman, and child in New York State.
It's interesting because we were speaking before the show started that it seemed under previous administrations that there was some increase in transparency. The public had more of a view of what happens, but some would argue that some things have to be negotiated behind closed doors. I mean, depending on your perspective.
It's interesting. The governor tried to explain that behind closed doors is still transparent, and didn't totally make sense. But in his mind, and I think legitimately to some point, you can't negotiate every issue in front, because then people know immediately what everybody's position is and how does somebody give and take when everyone knows where everyone is right away. But at the same time, it could be a more wide open process, at least taking into account more some of the minority perspectives. I think when you talk about transparency, having more people at the table, you can't have everybody at the table, but having more people at the table makes for better decisions in the end and provides for some greater transparency. But we have some things right now that are making this difficult to make a final product. And some of those are, I think, when you look at New York State, you have a new mayor in New York City. There's 8.5 million people in New York City. It's the largest city in the United States. Clearly, a great influence on this state's policies and whatever. But that mayor wanted to establish universal pre-kindergarten, free to everyone in New York City, that you can have your kids go to school at 4 years old, full day, and as a jump start for them. Now, for some school districts that have half-day kindergarten, for instance, upstate, who haven't felt they could afford to do that, funding full-day pre-K in New York City to meet the new mayor's agenda versus adequately funding upstate schools, for instance, becomes a battle, and a legitimate one in this budget. And I think Leader Kolb for the Assembly Republicans at the first General Conference Committee with all the leaders there ended up saying, we need to look at this entire state. We don't need to be finalizing an agenda of the New York City mayor that he is trying to promote. And so that's the type of thing that happens. We ended up there was an assessment on our energy bills that was started a few years ago when the state was short of dollars, and that's supposed to end up going off or expiring.
The 18A utility tax.
Yes. So. And we had made the shift. The governor had proposed it, And we had agreed that as we start to take that off, we would have most effect if we focus that on some manufacturing businesses to ease that away so that they could be more competitive, keep jobs here, and hopefully grow jobs here. There's been a shift in the Assembly in their proposal saying if you're going to give that relief, give it to homeowners first. Do we want it? We think it should be totally removed, but think it ought to go to the manufacturers first and then to the homeowners. That's a difference that's being determined right now within the budget. And so there are those types of sticking points. What is going to be the ultimate result of that is yet to be determined. But as the clock is ticking, we're at the 25th
yes,
of March.
March 25th, as of the statement. Yeah.
The budget to have it done by the 31st, so the new fiscal year that starts on April 1st, there's a lot to do here in the next few days.
Now take us through, again, not to lose people at home, but the process is that the bills have to be printed and then sitting on your desks for 3 days.
Right. The state constitution says that a bill must age, and that's meant to be so you can't just get the bill in front of you and demand a vote immediately and then move on.
However, we have seen that done with the message of necessities.
There is the one option to that, or one time that you can divert from that, and that is when a governor issues a message of necessity. And of course, we saw that with the New York SAFE Act, where the bill was printed on the desks and was put before the legislature immediately.
As part of the budget? No, that wasn't as part of the budget.
That was a
No,
standalone, but
right.
so it has been used for the budget in other years as well. But so to your point, though, if it does age 3 days, if a bill was passed or was printed and ready for consideration tonight, which is Tuesday, it would have to be there Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday to be live for a vote on Friday. And that would be taking us toward the weekend, as we're then the 31st is on Monday. So if a bill isn't printed by tonight, then it would push it to Saturday. If a bill's not printed until Thursday, it pushes it then to Sunday, and it could be pushed on to Monday. So those are uncertainties that we're dealing with right now. But if we're going to have a fourth on-time budget in a row, as the governor is really hoping, and I think the people of New York State deserve, you're going to need an agreement, bills printed by Thursday, so they can by Friday, so they can age Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and be eligible to be voted on by Monday the 31st. And again, within that, there are multiple budget bills, so we could see 2 or 3 bills printed tonight and some others not printed until Thursday.
And how many bills are there?
This year, I believe there's 8. There were 8 last year. Sometimes that's moved to 9 or 10 bills. And the reason for that is, again, there's multiple areas. So you have transportation, you have labor, you have education, and others. And some of them are lumped together in different parts, but public protection, health, there are multiple bills that we get to see.
Good enough. A lot of great information, and we shall see what happens in the coming days. Thank you very much for joining us today, sir.
Thank you.
If you'd like to reach out to State Assemblyman Bob Oakes, you can do so by contacting his district office at 10 Leach Road, Lyons, New York, 14489. You can call him at 315-946-5166. You can email him at oaksr@assembly.state.ny.us. You can also reach Assemblyman Bob Oakes on Facebook at Assemblyman Oakes. You can do a search there on Facebook. Thank you very much for joining us today. Until next time, have a good one. Take care.